Hi everyone, how are you? And I wish you all the best. In the previous video, I talked about the interaction effect shortly, and I'm supposed to talk about continue the previous section, the interaction effect by software and the technique or method by which we can evaluate the interaction effect. But before that, I'd like to talk about the intermediate variable. When we talk about the intermediate variable, a question might flash through our mind, which is, should we adjust for the intermediate variable or not? Before answer the question, let me talk about the definition and the meaning of intermediate variable. Here is our example. Suppose that we want to see the impact of smoking on the lung cancer. The lung cancer is our outcome, and the smoking is the main exposure. And of course, as I previously said, we can control or adjust for some confounders such as age, such as socioeconomic, and etc. So the main exposure is the smoking in this example, and the outcome is lung cancer. Uh, Here in the box on the top, you can see the association path between exposure and the outcome and the intermediate variable between. So the intermediate variable is a variable which is located between the exposure outcome association path. In other words, the exposure explains its effect through a variable which is located between the exposure and the outcome. In our example, suppose that the smoking, before showing its effect on the cancer, it shows adverse effect on the COPD, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease called COPD. So COPD in this example is the intermediate variable. So uh, the smoking shows its adverse effect on the COPD first, and then the lung cancer will happen. So before the lung cancer occur, the COPD will be firstly happen, and then we will see the outcome. So here the COPD is the intermediate variable because it is located in the between the association path. Uh, Sometimes the exposure explains its effect on the outcome completely through the intermediate variable, but sometimes not so. So sometimes the exposure shows its effect completely through the intermediate variable, but sometimes it partly shows its effect on the outcome. So in the two scenarios, what will happen if we control for the intermediate variable? This is the question. Should we adjust for the intermediate variable or not? If we let's talk about the first scenario. If the first scenario is that the smoking explains its effect completely through COPD, and if we, in this scenario, if we adjust for the COPD, so we can't see the impact of smoking on the lung cancer because we have already removed the impact of exposure in the model. In the second scenario, in which the smoking shows its effect on the lung cancer partly through the COPD. In this case, if we adjust for the COPD, of course, we can still see the impact of smoking on the lung cancer, but we can partly see that because we partly remove the impact of the smoking through adjusting for the COPD. So eventually, should we adjust for the intermediate variable or not? Um, if we uh, if you are looking for the net association between exposure and the outcome, in this case we should adjust for the intermediate variable. I have to say it again. If you are looking for the net association between the smoking and the lung cancer, you have to control for the COPD. Otherwise, you are not allowed to control for that variable. So if you are totally looking for the association between smoking and lung cancer, you are not allowed to control for intermediate variable, because if you control for the variable, you can't see any association between the smoking and lung cancer based on the first scenario. So, but if you want to see the net association, you can, of course, control for the COPD. If you control for the COPD, you can see if there is any association between the smoking and lung cancer or not. So this is the answer for the important question. So let's talk about the interaction analysis. I think it's enough in the video, so let's close that and see you in the next video.